Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing today? Can you guys hear me? Welcome all. I know I said for 5:30, but that's just a general window in case there are changes to my schedule. Um, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. A bit quiet? Is it still quiet? Hi, Akanksha. Benny, you say that every freaking time. Okay, so let's get started for today. I have two pieces I'd like to critique. I have this one and I have this one. This one was with a reference, which I think is so charming and so cute. Before I get started, I have a couple of announcements to make. Critique Hour needs your submissions. Critique Hour needs you, okay? And so you have to submit your art, right? Because sometimes I don't have anything to critique. Do it for me. It's free. So all you have to do is go to istebrak.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. That'll take you to the subreddit. Today I selected some pieces from here. You can also submit your work through the Discord, the public Discord channel. It has a text channel dedicated to general critique. There's all kinds of channels for resources. There's even a text channel for commissions if you guys are looking for some work or anything like that. There's always a wall there for any, any chance that there might be a job for you there. So that's it for announcements. I think I have my Patreon. If you want to feel like you're in a classroom without the major pressure of actually being in a classroom, you have a $20 option here a month to be my apprentice, and you get all kinds of critiques, assignments. You can hand in all kinds of work. You can hand in personal work for critique once a month. You can hand in the assigned homework that I assign you this month. My students are doing book covers, you can hand in alternative homework that is for just building base skill, building a base skill set. So it can be form studies that you can hand in. It can be a 14-day challenge, whatever you feel like learning. My students are very, very diverse skill-wise, I try to keep it very versatile. Okay, and I think that's it for announcements. I do have my masterclass if anyone's interested. I'm sure you guys know all about that already. So this piece is really, really well done. I'd like to leave it last. First, I'd like to take care of this one. So let's talk about what's happening here. Let's zoom all the way out. Let's look at this in different ways. So this is what a scientist would do. A scientist would look at things through, I'm just throwing some ideas, like under the microscope. They would look at things in cross sections. They would look at things mixed with other things and how they react. Science is like what we know about life is a result of just looking at things in different ways, interrupting our vantage point as we know it right now, just what you're looking at right now, interrupting that and introducing an extra element that may change the way we look at things. So that's how all science works, including visual science, which is what you're studying. This is art. So how does that apply here? Well, sometimes we zoom all the way out to take a look at what's happening in the scene. There's information here, believe it or not, when we zoom all the way out. When I zoom all the way out, these are the results. I'm going to use red lines for the results. We have missing elements. I feel like there's a lot of missing stuff. I'm just throwing in some random stuff that might look good. We have an entire black like curtain here. It's just this whole cutout of the lower half of the canvas. This is like a quarter of the canvas and it's completely gone. It's completely missing. You might as well have cropped it. Let's flip the canvas. All right, let's flip the canvas. That'll be in blue. All right, we can see some extra stuff that I couldn't see before. We see swirls. We see a grain of something, some kind of buildup, and that might be the power, but it's very, very subtle. I had to flip the canvas to see it. That's not very good. You don't have a good grip over the texture here. You're not sure what you're doing. You threw in just some random lines, random ideas of what a billowing cloud might do. And you have the same swirl or something similar to that, happening here. This is not the design choice you think you were doing. It's not this effective design choice. It's actually creating monotony. There's a lot of monotony here. There's also, let's use a green to identify it, what I saw off the bat, just what I saw with my eyes. I saw just emptiness. From here to here, there's not much going on. It's the same color. Okay, it's the same color. It's from left to right. We're not seeing much transition. There's a whole like background here, and you have no background. Background equals 0 right now because you have some, very, very shyly introduced, shyly rendered, very nervously rendered mountain ranges, but it shows that your strength is in characters and you have not much of an opinion about your strength with environments. But if you can paint this, you can paint a couple of hills and throw in some clouds and throw in a sky, maybe a lightning bolt, something to introduce some cool extra high tier, high stakes theme or motif for this attack scene or action scene. So nothing is happening in the background. There's some weird grain and swirls that are subliminal, or not subliminal, like not liminal, subvisual, or whatever the equivalent term is, that are just hanging around, creating a further extension of the monotony. And then there's just this blackout on the bottom part of the screen and a blackout on the top part of the screen, empty points of dead zones, just complete dead zones. There's nothing going on. So the painting feels unfinished. You could dress up the character as much as you want for another 50 hours. You can pour another 3 days of rendering onto this, and it's still not going to cure it. And then finally, I'm going to use like orange for it, for obvious reasons. The color wash is just this very, very warm color wash. Not a lot of the colors are getting any of the daytime warm, so you just have this color wash here that's hanging out over everything. Everything gets to be orange. Everything has this orangey, tan, sandy, whatever you want to say, foggy look to it. So what's going on? How do we fix all of this? Well, the most important thing to do for me is to lasso everything, because I'm not going to be able to pull any of these changes off dancing around the thingy. So bear with me while I do this. This is what AI could be doing. It could just, this is what I could do with AI, is it just lasso it for me, please. Lasso the character from the background, and it just does it for me in 2 seconds, and it's a little plug-in. Where is that? Instead, they just draw for us. We didn't need that kind of help. We just needed some, that actual help. Anyway, so I'm just separating the character from the background. Not sure what the heck I'm doing. Oh, there we go. Okay. So he has this club thing right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is decide on a light source that promotes the epicness of what's going on. There's this light source here that is very dim. It's very boggish. It's very smog-like, boggish. And that's fine. If that's where this beast hangs out, that's fine. But you still have to introduce something else, or else it's going to be a very, very boring composition. So let me preserve this lasso. Okay, so how do we decide on this lighting? So one thing we could do is decide on a little break of light, introducing some kind of cool environmental light to, again, do 2 things: give us a light source and interrupt the color monotony, or the monochromatic color. So this blue, right? This blue, B8, E4, EF. This is the blue I'm using on the background. All right, and that should help us break free of that color. So let me get my lasso back. Go into a new layer. Oops, hide. go into a new layer, and just introduce this blue tone. Small change, introduce some kind of lighting. Simultaneously, it is eclipsing the character, bringing him out of that background. All right, so this is where you can, with your layer access, I'm sure you have it, bring in some kind of environmental color, environmental elements, some tree silhouettes. If you've never drawn trees, there's no secret to it. You just jump in and you try to be as random as possible. That's the secret to trees. The next thing I'm going to do is get a cool tone. So something like a blue, a purple, a dark grayish, bluish purple. And I'm going to place that over everything that is not the immediate background. And I'm going to put that on darken. And I'm just going to introduce some more of that eclipsing. Again, to do two things. To change the color a little bit. Oops. To change the color and to add that little bit of extra shadow, believable shadow. So something is going on here that's not making any sense. So color, and then reduce the opacity. So here it is in full color. I don't need it to be at full. I just need it to be at low. So small color change for the foreground. I'm going to delete it where it changes the color for the worm. And then small color change for the guy. I'm going to delete it where we have worm values hitting him. So if you've ever been on like in an overcast day and then we have a nice color change for this this light here. And I'm going to just make sure we can still see. All right, so now we've introduced some kind of light source. We could, if we wanted to, throw in some sky and some extra mountains, but before I do that, I want to address what's happening with the worm. So the worm feels like it's completely lost its silhouette. So what I want to do is kind of give the worm some extra shape. All right, so what I'm going to do is change that standard C shape of the worm and introduce kind of a new shape. All right, and sorry about that tapping. It's my monitor shaking while I use the. Okay, so there's something happening. Oh, there it is. So this and this, let me just merge those down. Okay, so we have this extra shape to the worm. Don't be so worried about losing foliage. And then this extra little bit here. And then right under the worm, I mean, you could have made it a lot more epic, but let's just keep it where it is. And then I'm just going to change some of that so we can get a clearer image of where the worm is. And then using some under the worm as well to kind of show the disturbed earth and all of that. So in both directions. Okay, and then you can start to kind of break out of that shadow you have at the bottom of the screen that's really not doing much. I'll just go back to this brush real quick. And then I'm going to get that other lasso back and see what I can do about the sky. So these random little swirls you have here, they're not doing much. So what I saw when I zoomed all the way out is a need for shapes like this, some kind of body of mass of land that just shows a bit more going on in the background. Maybe just some shifts in value, just in the furthest most background, and then bringing in some of that cool value. And if it's supposed to be, you know, not an open environment, then you have trees at your disposal. You have all kinds of stuff you could get, shapes, like assets, let's say, let's just call them that, for this illustration that really fill the scene up. So this is just the most immediate background. You can add in, I'm gonna grab like this color, a tree shape right there. You can add in a tree shape just in the background. You can keep adding these trees in. And really make the most out of, really make the most out of what you're trying to tell with the story, which is this creature hunter is found one of these little bog monsters and is destroying it. So we need to build the environment of the bog monster. So you're also being an environment artist, a creature artist, where you're building these environments all at the same time. And then right under that, there's going to be like another batch of trees in the immediate background. So that was distant background for those hills. This is more of an immediate background or middle background. And I'm just trying to be as random as possible while also trying to conserve time. And then branches get smaller and smaller the higher you go. Okay, and then I'm just going to deselect that. And then just trying to build this environment. So you had so many things that were kind of crushing the scene a little bit. So let's select that again. And right in front of all of these, you can start bringing in that disturbed earth that just gets kicked up. And you don't have to feel like you need to render the mountains or the trees or any other element as much as you rendered the guy. You don't need to feel like you have to catch up the rendering. These things can be very, very under-rendered. And I'm just bringing in some of that blue of the environment to kind of fill the scene up. So you can keep it very, very boggy, very, very swampy. And there are so many more extra little things you can add. There's also like, I'm still very unhappy with the shape of the worm. Like, I want the worm to feel like it's really squirming. It's really just almost attaching itself to him. Have you ever seen a snake get killed? It's kind of sad. But while it kind of just tries to strangle the hand, or even a snake is caught, it wraps itself around your arm. And trying, you know, it tries to like suffocate you or fight back by just constricting your arm. So the same thing could be happening here. It could just be wriggling around. And so I'm still going to try to do that here. I'm still trying to find, and this is all stuff you address when you do thumbnails. Unfortunately, it wasn't addressed here, but when you do thumbnails, you get all this stuff out of the way. You answer all these questions really, really early. And so now we feel like it's really in pain. It's about to get, he has it injured. It's already about to die, and he's really kicking its butt. All right, and I'm just trying to change the value as it gets closer to the canvas. And trying to mimic your pattern here. I'm sorry if I got rid of some of your detail. All right, let me try to duplicate what you did here. something there, something there. Oops, I'm being too repetitive. Something there, something there. And then we have some basic cylindrical surface changes and some quick smudging. Okay, so we have this, you know, I'm trying to keep it where you had it. I'm trying to keep it where we left off. And then select inverse. Just continuously finding this balance between disturbed earth, background, and the guy here, and everything happening in the foreground. And then the most immediate foreground could be where you bring in all of that grass. Let me see if I can cheat a little bit if I have a grass brush that could quickly get the job done. I probably don't or won't be able to find it. I'm pretty sure I had a pretty good one. It's probably, this one's probably cheesy as hell. Let me pick that. Okay, so this one is okay. It's got like a nice surface blur. It's really meant to be for a foreground use. Let me duplicate it, merge it down. So we're kind of faking this idea that we're looking at him from a lower angle. Not quite, because he's actually level or sort of higher than the camera, but we have that. And then we can start kicking up some dirt and just letting some dirt get thrown around a little. Before I do that, I'm just going to darken this tree in some areas just to assist with the framing. Just at the very top, the tree could get a little darker. Oops. And let me see where I put that layer of mine. There it is. And I'm just cheating in some, oops, wrong color. I'm just throwing in some atmospheric perspective. What's going on? Why am I so... Oh, there we go. Just throwing it in there. Oh man, what is going on? Okay. Why? Oh, okay. Sorry. Just throwing that in. So finally, you now have a chance to, so I'm gonna flatten the whole thing, who cares? Now you have a chance to add in some, you know, some kicked, like dirt in the air, an extra little breaking of light coming through that might help us illuminate him a little bit better. I didn't change your colors too much. I only did that one change, but this light that's coming in, maybe I can do it this way. This light that's coming in might be able to help. It's not quite a blade. Is it a blade, or is it like a bone tooth axe or something like that? Let me just, whatever, cheat a little bit. So I'm just going to throw in a bit of shine right there. And then I'm going to add a bit of light on his club or axe or whatever it is, getting caught in the light. I'm going to add some extra light on his fur, just coming from the back. This is all going to get deleted. And a little bit over here, and then some indirect light on the surface of the worm, just to show it's kind of a slimy little worm. And then I'm just going to delete away what I don't need, because I have 2 layers right now. Okay, and just trying to sneak in whatever I can to create that volume. But that's what was happening in your scene. It felt a little bit empty. Just trying to show where we break through the cloud of the shadow of the trees. I'm not sure if I have a debris brush, but I'm pretty sure I saw one the other day. So let me see if I can pull that off. And I'm just trying to show this kind of foggy environment. And then you could put even another layer of fog right around the grass, right in the front, just to show it's a swampy area. And you should show some water getting kicked up, some swamp water. You should show some vines. You should show how thick with foliage this whole place is. You know, just kind of showing off some vine stuff going on, just to show how dirty it is and how thick this forest is. You can show way more trees in the background. You can have a shadow canopy at the top to show how thick this area is, and just how closed off the whole area is. It's kind of like a dark environment, so you don't get a lot of light. You have this canopy of swampy stuff happening at the top. All of this stuff, all of which can get blurred out. So I'm not going to add in all of that because I can't render all of that. I have another piece to critique, but I will add the canopy shadow, and I will zoom out and just test all of this. Remember the lines that I used for all of these changes. So I'll merge that down, and I'm just bringing in sort of like a dodge tool frame around the guy, just to separate him from his environment. A little bit of an extra light around the worm, behind the worm a little bit as well, and then try to tint it with that blue from earlier. Just to introduce a change in color so it's not so monotonous and monochromatic. And I'm just going to delete away what I affected here. So just trying my best to fill the scene up with some more stuff. Fill the scene up. You know, you're drawing like you have a $5 budget for the movie. Imagine you had like a whole budget for the movie. You know, you had like a nice, decent amount of money they gave you. You could build good sets. You could set up a really, really nice environment. And then I'm just going to place a bit of debris to separate the worm from the guy, because I feel like they're sharing the same contrast level, which is not good. You're really good with detail. You have an eye for detail, but you're not doing enough when it comes to large scale decisions, zoom out decisions, decisions that make the difference between character design and illustration. Illustration, you're going to realize, has very little to do with the stuff you're used to. It's not detail. Full scale illustration with backgrounds, I mean environment design, has not a lot to do with detail. It has a lot to do with the bigger picture, cinematography, camera work, environment design, even geology, and all of that, and not the same amount in detail. Like equal opposites, really. Environment design and character design, very, very different worlds. And that's why you usually find artists that are one or the other. You don't find artists that are both, because it's not common to find that so often. So I don't want them completely separate from each other, but just creating this kind of air of kicked up dirt, and then finally it's, you know, throwing crap around. It's throwing all of its tail around, and so maybe it'll create, I really don't know where that frickin' brush is, the one with all the debris. It was perfect for it. Oh. It's most likely in the rocks and all that other stuff. Might be this one. Oh, there it is. So I'm just going to, it's like a scattery brush. So I'm just going to throw some around and just delete what I don't need. It's a really crazy brush. And it's just kicking stuff around. Maybe it's also kicking them around in water droplets. And then I'm just going to do a quick blur filter, blur, like a general blur, just to bring those details down. And then I'm going to do some quick motion blur in different directions. So blur, motion blur, this direction can go this way. What? Why are they doing the opposite? That's weird. But pretty sure they're just doing the opposite of what I want. Whatever. So there's this much, and then there's some flying around this way, just to give some extra action and motion. So motion blur, I'll just throw this one a little bit more. This one can go that way. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Oops, not Gaussian. Filter, blur, motion blur. And I'll just throw this one that way. And I'll delete away at some of these and make it so that they're not, you know, just sticking out. So filter, blur, motion blur. This one I can just make like that way. And then I'm going to get the stamp brush, clone stamp, and I'm just going to scatter around some of them. Oh, there you are. So there's that. There's some of that here. Oops. And there's some of that. And then I just delete away. Probably deleting away with the same brush, so it creates that same random effect. It's kind of a tedious process figuring out all this detail and making sure it's not interrupting anything immediate. Then maybe I'll just darken things again. And so like this is pretty much what I can come up with on the spot, but it's definitely answered the questions that we've asked, you know, what we asked at the start, which is where's the rest of the painting? Where's the rest of the image? Where's the environment that this creature lives in? And, you know, who is he? Is he a hunt? Is he just here to hunt? What is he here for? And then I'm just going to mess with the color wash. I'm just going to mess with the types of colors. I'm always partial to cool tones, only because they offer this more realistic light environment, because our outdoor light is very, very cool. And what it will do is that it'll make sense with the shadowy canopy of the swamp. Even though the swamp is brown, you're going to have a lot of those cooling values in there that brings in a sense of realism. So I'm just getting rid of those rich, sandy desert colors where you do have a lot of warm wash. It didn't feel like a desert because of those hills you had and the reeds that you had here. You had a lot of these reeds. These grow in marshlands, not so much in the desert, unless it's a really thick, kind of lush part of the desert. So I'm just finding the coolest zones here, the coolest colors, and I'm just trying to make them a little bit more pale, that kind of Moors pale color. And so you can see how matches a little bit better, and wherever you do have red on his mask will now make a little bit more sense. But this tree here, it's just a little bit kind of eating the silhouette a little, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be a perfect silhouette. And I'm just going to give the worm a little bit more of a 3D look. Maybe throwing in some extra three-dimensional quality to it. Okay. So you had an amazing character. You had a really nice character design here, but not much else was happening. So start studying, do a master study of your favorite illustrators, of your favorite environment artists. Get your foot in the door for the, you know, for just understanding the basic step-by-step process of building an environment, just so you can get an idea without fully committing to your own illustration. A master class is a great way to just introduce yourself to a subject, to a theme. All right, and then I'm just giving that tree a little bit more of a three-dimensional look. There's all kinds of grasses you can add in the background. There's more grass you can add in the foreground. There's like a water reflection that you can add in between all of the grass. Like right here, you can add some water. You can add a body of water there. You can add just more of those little ponds that happen in marshlands. You know, they just kind of get flatter and flatter the further out we go. All of this stuff can be picked up in a reference that you know, look for and just study a little bit. You need a little bit more environment to make sense of this whole fight that's happening here, and tell the story of what this fighter had to do to find this creature. And it's starting to feel like the horizon is high. I did not want that at all. I wanted it to feel more flat. And those were just those hills I added that are kind of disappeared now. But let's add them back. Okay. Just slight little hills. Maybe I'll skip that final step. Okay, and that's it. Let's take a look at the before and after. Might do something. And so I think this was flipped. Okay, so before, after, so you have a bit more of an environment. You've filled in the scene a little bit in the foreground. This does feel like you have like some kind of smoldered volcanic, you know, base of the mountain, but it feels a little bit vague and very empty. And so you want to fill it up with something. You could still keep the color from before, like this is just reducing the opacity in between the two that I worked on. So this is like a middle ground between the two instead of fully cool. And you can still get the best of both worlds, but we need to see the worm, we need to see its silhouette a little bit more. It's kind of just like ethereal. It kind of just came out of the ground and not in the right way, not in a burrower way. And then you have the background, which is just a little bit vague. It feels like volcanic ash, but isn't quite volcanic ash. You have all of this marshland, but it's very, very repetitive. You have these like ribbing, patterns right here. This almost like rib cage. If you really did want to keep this environment, you could just go fully commit to this rib cage theme and just add in actual animal bones behind him. Anything at all just to fill the environment. I added trees because I'm assuming it's a marshland. So you could add those big kind of animal ribs. And then you could add some kind of volcano in the background just to have something happening in the background. And then of course you have the fiery stuff coming out of it. That's pink. So the lava, the magma, and then you could have something that kind of, you know, kind of repeats the motif of this red and orange. And then you can just show just more volcanic atmosphere, some kind of those volcanic rocks that look like they're cracking, and there's like tons of volcanic breakage or something like that in the foreground. So that's something else that came out, just that theme with that orange that you had. But to fill the scene up is really, really important because you're completing the story. You're telling the rest of the story, which is really part of what having a whole illustration. Or else just make the background blank and leave it a character design. Unless you're willing to give a background, you're really going to create a very empty scene. So I hope that was helpful. And then we have this one. So this one actually came with a reference, which is really cool. So let's take a look at it. So what you've done here is you've kind of given us two different light sources. We have the first light source, which is sharp, and this one, which is not sharp anymore. But we look in the reference and both are sharp. In fact, that's what's the most charming thing about the reference, is that it has a lot of light play. So let's resharpen this. It's really sharp in the reference. Look at it, it's almost like a perfect silhouette of the shadow. So let's do that. Let's find the sharpness of that shadow again. Because the most interesting part about your illustration is the light. That's always going to be the most interesting thing. It's always going to be the most appealing thing. It's just what makes life possible, you know, this light source that we draw, that we adore while we're drawing. There's other things you've forgotten about in your reference as well. Really, really key, important elements that make any illustration, even stylized illustrations, pop, which is the cool tone. So it's not quite, because there's no such thing as dark yellow. It's just like an orange or a pale orange or a pale grayish value. Dark yellow thematically, like theoretically, doesn't exist. And so what I'm going to do is just decrease the saturation of that yellow and shift down into red. Okay, and that should help us find a more believable dark version of that yellow. And then what I'm going to do is cool down all of those shadows by lassoing all of them. This shadow is literally blue. It's reflecting the blue of the light around it, and it's also blue because the warmth of the sunlight is not bringing out the warmth in the color of the ground. So two ways, the sky and the light being denied, have created an almost blue color. And so that's all reducing, and not having that is reducing the charm of this stylized version of the same scene. When you stylize, you exaggerate colors. Write that back. That's how you stylize colors. It's always a question that's asked as if it's like some kind of mysterious thing. It takes a lot of practice. No. The best way to get your foot in the door for stylizing color is just exaggerate it. There's blue there. Bring in tons of blue in yours. There's a little bit of extra red somewhere, like just a small, like a small temperature change. Exaggerate it in yours. It's always the best way to go about that. And so what I'm going to do here actually is, not sure how I'll move around the bag, is just capture anything that is in the shadow. And I'm going to put a blue tint right on top of it. So just like we saw with the one before this, there was not much going on in the scene and not much going on in the light language. The scene was just all brown. So that's not good in an illustration because there's so much more than brown in an environment. Look at this reference. There's blue between the brown. There's blue in the shadows. There's a cooler red that's saturating through the shadow of the umbrella. There's a lot of direct light, almost pure white in some areas. You've skipped all of those things. And so the color that I pick for this blue is probably, it's not really going to read well with color mode, but it's enough. And I'm just going to drop it in and just adjust it for the color mode. So this would be a nice degree there. And just trying to find a color that matches this environment. And then it's not going to stay there. I'm going to select the inverse of all of these areas. I'll do this little area here as well. And I'm going to bring in a really, really strong daytime value that I'm going to put on color dodge. And that's going to help us create these two opposing worlds of light and shadow. And it's not going to touch any of the shadowy areas that we have here. And then in that, I'm going to delete. So I'm going to delete anywhere. Whoa, what's going on here? I have no idea what just happened. Deselect. Deselect. That's weird. That is very weird. Let me see if it's just not picking up some areas. Maybe color dodge is just not working right today. That's okay. I don't even need those areas anyway. So I'm throwing in the color dodge, which is the light color of the sky. And then anywhere where the light can't see, I'm going to delete. So everything gets exaggerated. Just trying to lasso my way around it. So you're creating these two worlds. There's a border between them, and the border is the edge. And they never communicate. And to make them communicate, to force them to communicate, is to lose the realism. And in this little section I just lassoed, select inverse, in this little section I just lassoed, I am going to saturate. Just like we have in the reference, but we're exaggerating all of this. This is the subsurface scattering in the reference. And of course we can change the color. So the original color was red, so we can exaggerate that. We're going to find a really super red, and then we're going to throw in that color there and try to get that color to read, and then get a little bit of that pink right where the light really hops in, and throw that in there. So there's like tons of saturation here, and we have this extra light that is accounting for all of this. And we don't have to leave this light everywhere. This whole section of the umbrella can be deleted a little bit. And so you see how I'm working? I'm working from the light out. So I've designated a space for the light. Oh my God, Photoshop. I've designated a space for the light, and anything that it doesn't see, that's how I know how to paint. And so I'm just deleting at the light in that small area. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. In this small area, I'm deleting away at the light just to create that little shadow. And then this last little part of the umbrella, I'm really deleting. Okay, and so we have this cool zone right here. So this cool zone is going to get the same type of treatment for this part of the cart, whatever it is. And so I'm going to go to darken, and I'm just going to create that same. I see what happened. So right before I do that, actually, I have to delete away at this light that is in the umbrella or around the umbrella, and actually blend it out a little bit. So wherever it kind of canopies over him, I'm deleting away at the light, because technically the light can't even see this area. So we have this little canopied space where the umbrella is doing its job, and it's doing a good job of denying the light. And that might get blended, that might get blurred, doesn't matter. Okay, and so this little section here should have a bit more of that deleting happening. Maybe I can lasso it. My stupid brush keeps... okay. I'm just going to lasso this section. This section. This section leading into that. And then there. That way I can just delete. Okay, and so now everything under the umbrella is in its own little zone. And it's not being interrupted by anything. All right, and then that can be blurred so that you don't have a harsh line. You don't even have to have the harsh line. But you do have to have the value change. And so this color change right here, you can see how it's a little intense. I'm just going to decrease it. And then I'm going to delete away at any light. Oops. I'm going to cool down any light that's warm. This little bit right here. I cool that down. And then the rest of the umbrella, because it's so saturated, we can keep it, you know, out of that white light. So now that we have our saturation line, we don't need to make it a pale umbrella. We can bring back that saturation now that we've painted with all of that light in mind. But that's what you're supposed to do when you stylize. I'm going to keep all that light, but we're going to just do this to the umbrella, keeping most of its original color. And then we just get this realistic flatten. Okay. We get this more realistic idea of what the colors are doing. And then right here, I'm just going to, where is it? Magic wand. I'm just going to shift the color of the under the umbrella just so it matches a little bit better. So it'll be just like something like that, like a coral color. And then just exaggerate it a little bit. Highlights. Just exaggerating that light presence a little. And all these God rays that you had going on, you really didn't need them. Like you had these rays in the background, they weren't really that important, but let's say we keep them. We need to add something to the guy to kind of bring him out of his environment. He's a little bit kind of disappearing. Okay. So I'm just going to just give him some highlights. I'm going to give him a little bit of extra light on his cheekbone, just like we have this guy here in the reference. And I'm just going to delete where I don't need that. And his cap, in this case, it is. In the reference, it's not, but in this case, it is under the light. So I'm going to give it part of a shadow. Okay, so now we have this little bit of light. You see that? It makes such a big difference just to have a little bit of that light peeking at the top. And the same exact thing is going to happen to everything else that the light touches. So way more. So a little bit of that extreme white right there, a little bit at the top, a little bit on the side of that umbrella. And in a new layer, I'm just creating that rim light. Rim light is just normal light seen from a different angle. That's all it really is. And you have to be aware of where on the angle you are, where you are on that perspective with the light in mind. So not so much that I want to add, you know, rim light, like a framing of rim light, but just so that we get that little bit of exaggeration and that sun intensity, the intensity of the sunlight. Let me get my pencil brush and start to bring that in. And you can see that the color from the color picker is at a really, really intense point in the color picker. It's like all the way up. And that's what you want. Anything that is plastic, reflective, metallic, that gets this light, gets a lot of it and reflects a lot of it back. And I'm just looking at the navigator to make sure everything makes sense. And sometimes you'll get a little bit of ambient light coming in, sneaking into the space beneath. And right underneath the umbrella, you want to like exaggerate what the umbrella is doing. So we're going to exaggerate what happens when light passes through a colored translucent film and that it has this red little glow that comes out of it. Do you see that? And so that adds a little extra charm. I'm just going to use that on color. Small little change, but makes a big difference. And then finally, to just keep completing this story we're telling about this really intense sunlight. It's a beach. It's the most light you're going to get. I'm going to exaggerate the ground beneath him, but also simultaneously desaturate it. I don't want this ground to feel like it's a very, very rich desert Mars soil. It has to have that direct light touch to it. And so this is much brighter than it should be. So that's why I have 2 layers, and then I'm just gonna try to separate the matter from the environment as best as I can. I'm not gonna be able to lasso perfectly this time around. What's going on? think it's a really cool drawing considering what's going on in the world right now against minorities. This type of scene has always broken my heart because they're just work so freaking hard, and they'll sell and they'll try their best to just make money, and they'll work on the the worst environments under the sun, and it just always breaks my freaking heart. So when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, this is so sweet. And I'm just going to delete away at, oops, of course, delete away at that. And I'm just deleting, see what happened? I just deleted that whole section. And so now we have a nice bright reflective surface. And what is the desert sand? Not desert sand, the beach sand, if not one whole reflective hot top. And it just reflects everything. And so we need a lot of that light to shoot back up. So see that? So we need to make some of that light feel like it's really glowing back upward. Okay, so I'm just merging that down. And I'm just going to let some of the light, the heat of the sun, all of that just emanate up from the bottom of the canvas in some areas, just to show there's like a hot spot reflecting there and reflecting there. And then there is the thing that I left for last, which I shouldn't have, which is the entire background, the sky. So this is going to be really tricky for me to do. So, I mean, you could keep it where it is. You could keep it where it is. You can keep it just as it is, but it's showing a less beachy environment. There's a whole blue sky in the reference, right? But it doesn't feel so beachy here. So let me see if I can really quickly sneak in a blue sky before I finish up class. Okay, and then lasso. Very long class today. And then there's a little tiny bit there. So this is going to be a crazy thing that we're doing. It's kind of a crazy change, but let's see what happens. I also have that filter, that blue filter, the pink filter, sorry. So let's see if we can find one that matches the environment. If we bring in the blue of the sky, we have to kind of introduce it into other areas of the illustration. So we first and foremost have to blur the base of it. Whoa, where are you going? So we're going to blur the base of it. We're going to introduce like this. I'm going to lock the layer. We're going to introduce like a white horizon effect there, just along the horizon line, just to show that the atmosphere is thick further in the background. I'm going to let it climb along the edges of the illustration. And then I'm going to, in a new layer, introduce that same exact blue as we see here, blue, 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 blue. I'm going to use it to, someone's going to make that into a song, aren't they? They're going to remix that. And then, and I'm just going to throw it into the water. And then to make the water look like it's far away is actually very, very easy. You just grab that same white and you brush it over the furthest part of the horizon line. And again, I have to delete one more time. So I'm really on maxed out edit mode today. So this is how they do stuff in Pixar. This is how they do stuff in animated movies. How do they keep those environments and textures and assets looking so realistic, but they look so charming? It's with the color exaggeration. It's with this, not just color, all the things that light does is exaggerated in those movies. Okay, so I just want to duplicate that, just to bring in those exaggerated tones of the distance there, and then try to reintroduce as best as I can the filter color. And you see, like, we don't really miss those clouds you had and that. I mean, you can add in some kind of wispy They're called stratus clouds, I think. You can add that in there. They're not really necessary because it's a beach. It's supposed to feel a little bit more open and clear. And if there were clouds, we really wouldn't see them the way we're seeing them here. We need to zoom way out to see a full scale of them. So that's why I say don't worry so much about showing clouds in your skies. It looks more professional to keep them clean. And I'm just exaggerating that little horizon line a little bit more just so it feels environmentally, just so it's giving. Oh God, I cringed. I should not be saying these things. So I'm too old. So I'm just getting that pink again, just slightly. It's just the filter of the red of the environment sneaking in through the umbrella. Being careful not to affect too much. And then just doing that. And then we have the space, that little bit of the umbrella there. So I'm just going to fix that. I'm not too happy with it. So I'm just going to try to uncool it a little bit, just so it still matches the texture. It's still generally cooler. But I'm going to keep that blue on the side. You can see a lot of the blue is on the side of that square there, which is the environment light. Literally the environment light is visible. It's reflecting on the side of the card. And then you can bring in some of it on his shirt. Sorry, the screen is so low. I'm trying to keep both visible. You can bring some on his shirt. And I'm just going to silhouette his hat a little bit more. And yeah. So let's take a look at the before now. I love these light reflections like these. You're just grabbing the light and you're just painting it, the sky color, and you're just like doing streaks of sky color. You're literally, that's all you're doing, and it's showing that the water is there. And there's some variation, and it's not a lot. So I hate skipping that stuff because it's so charming in an illustration. Just showing those little bits of the sky reflected in the flat part of the beach where the shore, you know, where the shore is, where the water meets the land, and the water has just receded, creates this like mirror-like effect. I love watching it at the beach. And suddenly you see the sky and suddenly you don't. So I don't like skipping it. So I'm just going to add it in really quickly. It's just a little touch, and it just does so much for the environment. And I'm just gonna, I don't want to keep doing too much because I gotta go. But there it is. So filter, before I go, filter, blur. I'm just gonna blur it a little. So if you are interested in doing those cute little environment, so even if it's natural scenes, look at the reference and look at what's happening in the reference. Look at how you can exaggerate it, how you could get away with breaking some of the rules. You still technically have the rule. That's the beauty about stylization. You still have the rule. You're just doing too much of the rule. So you're not actually breaking the rules when you stylize the fundamentals and the light in order to create that scene. You still have it. It's still there. You're just doing too much, but too much in a really, really fun way that fills the human eye up, fills the eye of the viewer, and they just can't get enough. And to this day, that style, that whole effect has not been left behind. You still find 3D animated movies that have all this realism, but they just turned up the saturation a touch too much, exaggerated the bloom a touch too much, reflections off of colored surfaces are a little too reflective. Everything just feels a lot more intense. Let me see if I can, instead of changing the color, I can just, yeah, that might be fun. I would be careful to let it be too cool. just like kind of giving it that, but that might be fun as well, just giving it some illumination. Or maybe just going crazy, and you know, the guiding star here is exaggeration. So just painting it in with like a very, very bright yellow. I'll try to get a cute yellow that's a bit more warm. Yellow can look very pukey very quickly. So you can just throw in that bright yellow there. And then you can tell I'm having fun because I refuse to finish. And then just sneak in, now that we changed the color of the yellow, we can just sneak in a little bit more of that yellow. Just a little bit right on top. So we have that finished. Okay. And the same thing on the darker side, but just a little bit of yellow, not too much, because you don't want to break the rules. Always with the blue, keeping the blue present at all times is really, really important. And I'm just going to make sure the tire is still good. Okay, let's look at the before and after. So we exaggerated all the fundamentals, basically. You had them, you did a good job, but we just exaggerated them according to the reference, whatever the reference was telling us. So before, after, before, this felt a little bit like it's sunset, but it's not quite sunset. It wasn't sunset in the reference. The light is there, but it's not quite sharp. You sharpen some of these, you sharpen some of these. You didn't sharpen some of these. There's no subsurface scattering on the umbrella, even though in the reference there is. There's no direct light, so no white light. There's white light everywhere here. There's white light on the metal of the cart. Sorry, my bird is, she's telling me it's 6:11, like she's allowed to play now. She's telling me class is done. That's it. I give you an hour of silence. Now I have to play. So so that's, yes, I know. So before, after, she's like, come on, close it out already. That's enough. Okay. And so I'm just cleaning up here. So before, after, before, after. If you want to, oops, before, after, before, after. Khubastini. So that's it really. That's how you get that kind of stylization. Just find the fundamental and exaggerate it. Thank you guys for hopping in today. I really appreciate you guys coming out to the live streams. I'll see you guys soon, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone in the US. I really appreciate you guys. I'm so thankful for all of you. I'm so thankful just to be here and be able to teach. It really means the world. Just being able to do this. I really don't care about views. I don't care about money. I don't care about any of that. I just want to be able to just sit down with you guys and talk about art. And that's all I really care about. So I'm thankful for you guys, and I'm thankful you guys just come here and watch me talk about it. It's really cool. I'll see you guys next week. I will be skipping this Thursday, of course. I'll see you guys next week on the 2nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye, everyone.